Donald Trump's most famous book is The Art of the Deal. He ran his first campaign in 2016 on a promise to make deals for America, to make deals with America's allies and adversaries.
A good deal maker will make great deals, but will do it the way our founders thought it should be done. People get together, they make deals.
For the sake of American prosperity and American security. The hallmark of this second Trump administration are deals, a series of deals. Deals for tariffs, deals with institutions of higher education, deals with various businesses and manufacturers. Deals, 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 deals. The basic framework of Trump is the deal. I've been thinking about the deal quite a bit over the last few weeks, prompted by these deals relating to tariffs, these attempted trade agreements with other countries, and these deals with institutions of higher education, with colleges and universities like Columbia and Cornell and Brown and potentially Harvard. Now, the thing about these agreements, the thing that makes them tricky, is that there's no actual guarantee that the administration, that the president is going to hold to his end of whatever bargain they come to. It's all quite ad hoc. You agree to allow the administration to have access to your admission data, to shape and influence curricula, to determine what kinds of students are arriving on campus, to put limits on the number of international students on campus. You're giving the White House a tremendous amount of authority basically to run a university. Authority which no White House has ever had, authority which is arguably unlawful. Authority which, even if it isn't unlawful, is an affront to a free society. In a free society, the government doesn't tell schools who they admit and what they have to teach. But setting all of that aside, the deals being made here are on a foundation of sand. You agree to one provision, and the administration makes additional demands. Every inch you give is license for the White House to take a foot. Likewise, with these trade agreements, which don't really exist, what we see are efforts at essentially extortion. The administration threatening high tariffs in order to get advantages for itself, but never making a commitment to not reneging on those agreements, erratically imposing new duties for the sake of being able to impose new duties. This too, it should be said, probably unlawful. Congress has not ceded the power to make tariffs to the president. The president is simply doing it under the guise of some kind of emergency. But the haphazard nature of the administration's tariff policy belies the notion of any kind of emergency. What's striking to me about this construct of the deal as it sits in Trump's hand is precisely its haphazardness, the degree to which it's ad hoc, the degree to which it follows no particular rules or procedures. The deal in the hands of Trump is the mechanism for exerting authority over another, exerting power over another. And Trump actually admits this in The Art of the Deal, where he describes his method of deal making, which essentially is to make promises he knows he's not going to keep, renege on those promises, and force his interlocutor to move closer to his position to get some fraction of what they thought they were going to get in the first place. And you can see this dynamic playing out in the attempts at agreements with other countries and these deals with institutions of higher education. But I think there's something deeper here. The notion of government by deal making, of governing by deal making, of making these bilateral one-on-one agreements based not on rules or precedent or standards, but on whatever happens to be agreeable in the moment between the two parties, I think this method of governing is just inherently undemocratic. The thing about this kind of deal is that there's no public input. With these tariffs, for example, Congress has no particular say on the negotiations. Some of this is by choice, but if you were to just defer to the president's method of deal making, there's no room for a congressional role. There is no transparency. If the deal is primarily a function of who's in the room, then if you're not in the room, you don't necessarily know what's going on to make the deal. The deal is non-standard. There's no set of rules you can use to apply, no way to replicate the exact conditions. The rule, in effect, is whatever the deal maker says the rule is. All of these things run counter to the rule of law and the basic democratic ethos, which calls for public involvement, for transparency, for standardization, for rules. There's a reason in the American experience of state-making that we moved in relative short order from the spoil system to a professional civil service. The professional civil service is compatible with what we expect out of democratic institutions. Standardization, rule-making, rule-following. People with different backgrounds should be able to go to a bureaucrat and expect the same kind of behavior, the same kind of results. The administrative state that emerges in the 1920s and 30s and 40s is, again, a reflection of this democratic need for standardization, for rules, for transparency, for some measure of accountability. It is noteworthy that in the least democratic parts of the United States, in the early 20th century, the American South, there is much less of this standardization. Instead, whether you could vote, whether you could get access to benefits that you earned was dependent on discretion, on the whims, on the deal-making ability of the local official. If you couldn't make a deal for reasons of race or gender or religion, you were out of luck. You were excluded, outside of the sphere of belonging. I didn't make much of Trump's obsession with the deal during his first term or his first campaign, but now as I think about it, the deal, as Trump conceives of it, is perhaps the skeleton key to his entire conception of power and governance. The deal is all about his whim, his authority, his ability to leverage his power over you. And the deal is uncertain, it's unstable. Once you've made it in his hands, you have no guarantee that you'll get anything in return for what you've given up. Most likely you won't whatsoever, as many of these colleges and universities are learning the hard way. The deal harkens back to forms of political organization that rests on the singular authority of a particular man and not on the collective ability of us all to make decisions for ourselves. The deal, you might say, and this is going to be a terrible dad joke, is no real deal at all. That wasn't good. That was bad, but you get what I'm saying.